Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Tim. And I think you've outlined very eloquently some of the aspects which obviously attach themselves to many companies, but particularly the smaller companies, which are, as we all know, the lifeblood of most economies, certainly our economy in this country. The work of the QCA is instrumental in ensuring that small companies and medium-sized companies continue to operate and to grow, and to do so in an environment which is appropriate for regulation. You all promote a long-term investment culture. That itself reduces the cost of raising capital, and more importantly, perhaps, it raises awareness of the sector. These three elements are essential to ensuring smaller companies become the engines of growth that they have the potential to be. Now, Tim mentioned the relationship between the FRC and the QCA, and we're very happy and pleased that it is as good and as constructive as it is at the moment. The QCA has developed a corporate governance code, Tim mentioned this, specifically for your members, for all of you, which sits alongside the FRC's UK corporate governance code and helps the quoted companies put into practice appropriate governance arrangements. It's widely recognized as the industry standard for growing companies which do not yet apply the FRC's code. And as you know, the FRC's code is on a comply or explain basis. And one of the real pleasures to me is that when one thinks of Europe as being somewhat dirigiste, Europe has actually adopted the comply or explain methodology which we have in this country. Now, you more than most know that smaller quoted companies are critical to generating future jobs and growth in the economy. But they need access to capital to invest and grow. At the same time, they often have limited resources and they face challenges on governance and on reporting. The FRC has undertaken a number of initiatives aimed at ensuring all sizes of companies put in place governance arrangements that uphold London's reputation as a beacon for good governance and reporting, and that make it such an attractive place for companies to list. Probably the most integral element of good governance is good company culture. Often smaller companies have a majority shareholder or founder who establishes a strong culture for the organization, which is a big attraction to investors. But the concern is that as the company grows, that figure, the owner, founder, shareholder, relinquishes some influence. How then to retain the good reputation and the good culture already established? Hopefully, by instilling cultural tenets that have served the company well up to now. Tone from the top, we talk about, and influencing the behavior of management and staff, and that can be maintained for the future. A board, in our view, should define the purpose of the company and what type of behaviors it wishes to promote. This involves asking questions and making choices. How to achieve the correct balance between constructive innovation and disproportionate risk-taking. How to integrate new leaders into the company culture, particularly at times of merger or acquisition. How to maintain culture under pressure. Whether different parts of the business should operate different cultures. And how to encourage constructive discussion and transparency amongst its management and staff. The board needs to be seen to live the values that it espouses and to be very clear about any practices for which there is zero tolerance. Even the perception, never mind the reality, of poor ethics and leadership can affect consumers and negatively impact investor confidence, something that smaller companies looking to grow can ill afford. During 2015, the FRC will continue its market-led work to assess how effective companies are at establishing company culture and practices, and how good they are at embedding good corporate governance behavior. We will consider whether there is need to promote best practice and report back in the autumn on our findings. Let me just say something about succession planning. Once good culture is in place, however, the ongoing success of the company and its culture are rooted in succession planning, which is particularly important for smaller companies as they are growing and gaining momentum. For companies in their nascence, Succession planning may not seem immediate, but as their business grows, boards should think about the needs of the company in 3, 5, or even 10 years. Boards, in thinking about their business strategy and expansion plans, should give thought to the balance of skills, background, and experience that they will need from senior executives and even their non-executive directors. They should look for people who will help them grow, as well as those who can be instrumental once they have grown. We intend to publish a discussion document on this in the next couple of weeks. It has been developed in the spirit of an inquiry as opposed to being a formal consultation, and we will ask for advice on what good looks like. However, we're not seeking identikit responses. Good will look different for businesses of different sizes and, of course, even in different industries. And we will not necessarily make changes to the corporate governance code, but will use responses we receive to consider whether we can help by perhaps issuing guidance. But it's not just good governance where smaller companies need support. We found that smaller companies with limited resources have been slow to embrace change in corporate reporting. Many still tell us that investors are not interested in their reporting, and consequently, they ask why should they make the effort. By contrast, we have consulted investors extensively over the last year and have repeatedly heard the opposite point of view. Investors stress that they're more dependent on the annual report in the smaller company sector because the analyst community does not support this sector to anything like the same extent as it does to larger companies. So to the investors, the report and accounts become more important. We will consider how we can stimulate better communications between investors and smaller companies in a cost-effective way. We published our paper on how this might be done and how smaller companies might be supported, and I stress supported, not chastised, earlier this week. We will hold a seminar on 9th July on the measures proposed in the report, and I encourage you to attend. In all of what we do, like the QCA, we rely on feedback, we rely on advice, and yes, sometimes criticism from our stakeholders. The wider the feedback we receive from companies, investors, and government, the better. Smaller companies are often seen as the engines of growth and of job creation in the economy. But if they are to grow, they need investment. Our work on governance and reporting by smaller companies shows where you can improve your engagement with investors. We look forward to working with you and your stakeholders to put in place practical, useful measures that enhance investor confidence in governance and in reporting, and to ensure your continued prosperity and growth. You, after all, are the future bastions of business in this country. Thank you very much for listening.